Hello guys, TuhonBillMcg here from Pekiti-Tirsia International. I'd like to work on some solo practice drills for Espada y Daga, set 1. We're going to begin with double knife rather than sworded knife so that you can get an understanding of how to move with these knives. The first thing you want to learn when you pick up a weapon is how not to hurt yourself with your own weapon. That's a little bit what this drill is about. So, we're going to start. We have 3 thrusts in set 1. I want you to start with the easiest. We're going to do a reverse triangle. The knives on the hips. And you're going to thrust with the backhand like you're doing a cross. This is going into either the oblique or the top of the quadricep here. The thrust is done horizontally, so you get more muscle fibers in the oblique or the quadricep. Reverse triangle either side. And again, this is an indexing drill in that you're learning how not to stab yourself. You don't want to hit and then just leave it in space where it might go behind you and cut a leg as you go by. So you're pulling it back to your hip. So, right leg steps out, left hand delivers. Left hand steps out, right hand delivers. Next is going to be a backhand thrust. So we're starting at the hip. Don't forget, when you're doing the sworded dagger, that sword is going to be up guarding the high line. A lot of the reason you have the knives down low right now, or your dagger side down low when you do Espada y Daga, is so it does not interfere with the sword arm and you don't get cut. Sometimes if you had it up on a high guard, you don't want to walk your sword arm into that knife. So that's why we're down in this position. So now I want you to sidestep, bring the dagger up, with the pommel against your plexus heart area, thrust from there, pull back. And you notice the point gets on line before I move forward. See that from the side. I'm not flicking the knife, because if I get contact in the middle of that, I could actually get disarmed. Side step and deliver, side step and deliver. And I'm indexing back to my own body, because putting your, wait a minute, it's a lot easier for your hand to find another body part under stress than it is some vague area. If we were doing handgun reloading, you know, taking the magazine, your hand can find hand, it's much easier to reload. As opposed to, say, reloading a rifle and the magazine wells up in front here, it may be 6 inches in front of your right hand, it might be 8 inches. You know, telling 6 to 8 inches under stress, the difference is a little bit tough. But your hand can find the other hand very easily under stress. That's the same idea here. When you deliver the knife, you want to deliver and come back to a point on your body so you do not hurt yourself with your own knife. That becomes very important on the high thrusts. On the high thrust, you're indexing, you're touching the back of your hand against your head, or close to it, thrusting out, and then I'm going in, that back of my hand is touching my shoulder. If I just thrust and pull back, I might pull that back edge of the dagger into my arm. You'll also notice after the thrust, hand finds shoulder, and then I open my thumb to have a guard there, to have some distance between the back cutting edge and my shoulder. This is not real important if you have, you know, a little 4-inch pocket knife. You have a 8 or 9-inch double-edged dagger, it gets very important because that cutting edge can get dragged right across your deltoid and stop the ability of that deltoid to move. So, you're going to start off again in a reverse triangle, so my right leg's forward, my left hand comes up, I thrust, shoulder, I touch my right shoulder with my left arm, open the thumb and pull back. I go to the other side, lift up, thrust, touch hand to shoulder, open the thumb as a guard, and go back down. So you're in, and in, and in. And that's your double knife drill for Espada y Daga set 1. Okay guys, what we're going to do here is integrate the short sword and the dagger in our movements. Begin by keeping your dagger here just out of the way. Later on you can bring it up to this position, but you don't want to start here in basic training because you don't want to run the risk of walking your sword arm into the dagger. do diagonal 4 cuts, very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to start integrating that high thrust into that. So 1, bring this up high, thrust, 2. Come across, 1, 2. Now you notice that after the thrust, I bring my left arm deliberately over so my left hand is touching my shoulder. That frees a line for your for your sword to have freedom of motion. If I stab and pull back with my dagger straight back, you see I'm limiting where my sword can go safely. So, 1, thrust, 1, let's try that again. 1, thrust, 2. 1, thrust, 2. 1, thrust, 2. All right, now, let's add the second thrust into that series. So we have a 1 cut, a high thrust, a 2, now a backhand thrust. Now watch from here. When I go back to 1, I want you to take that left hand and bring it back to the hip. Get away from that sword arm coming down so you don't stab yourself in the arm. So, 1, thrust, 2, thrust, and now watch. 1 again, I pull back. 2, thrust. 1, thrust, 2. Backhand thrust. My 1 comes with the sword. I'm pulling my dagger hand back. Now let's integrate the third thrust, that low into the thigh. 1, thrust, 2, thrust, 3, 4, thrust. Let's try that again. 1, thrust, 2, thrust, 3, 4, thrust. From the side. 1, thrust, 2, thrust, 3, 4, thrust. 1, high thrust, 2, backhand thrust, 3, 4, low thigh thrust. This side, 1, thrust, 2, thrust, 3, 4, thrust. And that's your basic drill for solo training in Espada y Daga Set 1.